It occurs to me, if there's one thing that I think that successful people that I've encountered in the athletic arena do, it's that they define themselves. They decide for themselves what success means, why they want to achieve it, where they want to go. So I came up for audiences such as this. I'll give you the shortened version of it. I call it Define Yourself. So these are 10 ways to define yourself, cobbled together from my various experiences. Number one, be careful what you work for. Notice I didn't say wish, I said work. Anybody can wish. Work takes time, it takes discipline, and you better be sure you're doing it for the right reasons. My grandfather used to say, if you make $10,000 a year, you put up with $10,000 worth of crap. If you make $100,000 a year, you put up with $100,000 worth of crap. So you can imagine how much Mike Jackson has to put up with, for example. But I think the point is that I see so many young people go out into the world and they're looking to make money, but as my grandfather also used to say, you don't just have to make a living, you have to make a life. And keep in mind, if you win the rat race, you're still a rat, okay? Number two, to define yourself, assign yourself. When I graduated from Duke, the commencement speaker, Marian Wright Edelman, talked about how she would come down as a little girl and her dad was in the living room and he would say to her, why aren't you doing your homework? And she said, well, I finished it. He said, okay, now go assign yourself some. So that's always kind of stayed with me. Assign yourself. Number three, be competitive, not comparative. There's a difference. I think it's important to compete. But again, if you're competing for the right reasons and in the right way, then I think it becomes more fulfilling than if you're just trying to beat somebody else or get what somebody else has. There's always going to be somebody with more money, bigger car, nicer house. And if you're always comparing you to other people, I think you come up short. Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke coach, likes to say, run your own race. That's what it means to be competitive and not comparative. Number four, treat everybody well all the time. The two important words there are everybody and all. Now, I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. We get snappish. We don't always follow that. But I think the point is that I see successful people not seeing the world in hierarchical ways. You know, somebody might think that they're better than if they, have a nice job with fancy clothes and a lot of money, that they're better than some guy who drives a garbage truck. But it depends on your perspective. I mentioned I have two boys who are 2 years old and 4 years old. Believe me, they think the guy driving the garbage truck is much, much cooler than their own father. I'm just on TV. Frankly, they'd rather watch SpongeBob SquarePants. So treat everybody well all the time. Number seven, be a good teammate. You saw up on the screen a guy named Clark Kellogg used to play for Ohio State. When I got to CBS, Clark was a very accomplished basketball player, had been a broadcaster a long time, had been in the studio by himself. And here I come in, I'm taking up his oxygen. I never played, obviously. And I think a lot of people in that situation might have been threatened. I can tell you there's been no one more welcoming and more encouraging in my line of work than Clark Kellogg. And so you might say, well, that means Clark Kellogg has no ego. Actually, I think the opposite of true. I think Clark Kellogg has a huge ego. I think he might have the biggest ego of anybody I've ever met. And therefore, he's not afraid to be a good teammate. He's not afraid to be encouraging. He's not afraid to step aside and let somebody else have their chance too. John Calipari, the Memphis coach, likes to say, it's amazing how much you can accomplish when nobody cares who gets the credit. I think that's what it means to be a good teammate. And again, to quote the great John Wooden, be interested in having the best way, not your way. Number eight, fear failure. Now again, we always hear the opposite, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. I think you should be really afraid to fail. That doesn't mean you should stop trying. But Jerry Wainwright, the coach at the Paul, said something once to me. He said, you put 8 people in a lifeboat and they're going to work together. You put 8 people in a luxury liner and they're going to argue about who has to serve the wine. I think fear is a great motivator and a great uniter, but you shouldn't run from it. Number 9, read. Now, I'm not just saying this because I have a book coming out next year, by the way. I don't know if maybe my mom didn't mention that, but we'll work on that, Mom, for next time. I confess I'm a little, not to sound like a fuddy-duddy, but I'm concerned with the culture of young people when I hear them talk about all the video games they play, all the DVDs that they watch. I'm not sure people read the way they need to read as much as they used to, and frankly, I think that means reading nonfiction. I think it means learning about the world around you. It's nothing wrong with, throwing the trashy novel into the beach bag, but if you want to be successful, if you want to compete to win, if you want to define yourself, then you need to know about the world around you and who you are, and that means reading, and it means reading nonfiction. Finally, and this is the most important, to define yourself, be grateful. A lot of people ask me sometimes, who's the best athlete you've ever covered, or your most favorite person to be around? His name is Juan Dixon. Juan was a guard at the University of Maryland. He had a very difficult childhood. He grew up in inner city Baltimore. Both of his parents died of AIDS. They were heroin addicts. But he came up in a very loving environment with his grandparents and his older brother. When he was a senior in high school, he was 6'3", 150 pounds, hardly the profile of a future NBA All-Star. Not very heavily recruited, but he went to Maryland, and because of his effort and his strength and his character and his guile and his courage, he became one of the best basketball players in the country. And during his senior years, he was this terrific player, and so many people were attracted to his story. I got a chance to cover him and get to know him a little bit. And, Juan didn't like dealing with the press. And he abided me, partly because I was from Sports Illustrated, but I kept at it and got to spend some time with him. And anyway, so at the Final Four, every year, the NCAA puts together a video that involves interviewing the main principals of the championship game after the game. And I know the people who put together that video. So as a reporter from Sports Illustrated, they used to let me sit in on those interviews, take the quotes that were said in those interviews, and use them in our story. I was the only print reporter in the room. So on the night that Maryland won the championship, 2002, Juan Dixon was the most outstanding player at the Final Four. They won because of him. He was a senior. He comes into the room and he does his interview. And, other people had come through, Gary Williams, the coach, and other players, and they were perfectly fine, perfectly courteous. Juan gives his interview, talks about winning the championship. He's got the net around his neck, and I'm kind of sitting off in a corner. And when his interview was over, he walks over to the cameraman and he sticks out his hand, and he says, "Thank you." The guy kind of looks up at him. He says, "Okay, you're welcome," shakes his hand. There was a sound technician over on the side of the room, and Juan Dixon walks over to him. He sticks out his hand. He says, "Thank you." The guy looks at him. He says, "All right, you're welcome." There may be 9 or 10 people in various capacities around the room. Juan went to every single one of them. He stuck out his hand. He said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." And he came right up to me, and he stuck out his hand, and he said, "Seth." And I remember he said my name because most of the people that I cover don't really know my name or take the time to remember it or really say it back to me. But he said to me, "Seth, thanks for all you did for me, man. I really appreciate it." I said, "Juan, thank you. It was really a pleasure." And it struck me that aside from three-point shots and good defense, that was the reason why Maryland won. Because the one guy in the arena who had the most reason to be proud and happy for himself with everything that he had gone to, losing his parents at a young age, the best guy on the floor was also the most grateful person in the arena. And I've always kept that with me wherever I've gone, that no matter what happens, no matter how much success or adversity you encounter, to always be grateful. And I think that's the most important aspect for defining yourself. So on that note, let me say that I'm grateful for the honor of addressing this group. I'm grateful to be able to take part in what you all do. And most of all, I'm grateful for a chance to spend a little time with my mom. Thank you very much.